Welcome to this new edition of the Riley King Network Investigates. Tonight, on the Riley King Network Investigates, Breonna Taylor, say her name. That's all. Tonight, beginning right now on the Riley King Network Investigates. Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this Friday evening edition of the Riley King Network Investigates. Breonna Taylor, say her name. Let's begin tonight's edition right now. A look at Breonna Taylor's connection to ex-boyfriend Jamarcus Glover before she died. He was the original target of the investigation that led police to Taylor. It has been more than 8 months since Breonna Taylor was shot and killed in her Louisville, Kentucky home by police who were executing multiple search warrants in connection to the drug investigation that involved Taylor's ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover. Those who were close to Taylor say her relationship with Glover was over and that her death was a result of an incident that should have never taken place. Back on March 13th, just after midnight, Taylor was sleeping at home with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, when they were woken up by banging on her door. The 7 Louisville police officers who were executing the warrant say that they had knocked on the door and announced themselves as police. Walker, a legal gun owner who claims he never heard the police identify themselves, said he let out one shot at the ground, which he later described as a warning shot in self-defense. 3 officers immediately returned fire and ensuing incident left 1 officer injured, Sergeant Jonathan and Taylor, dead. Glover, the original target of the investigation that led police to Taylor's apartment, was already in custody at the time of the shooting at Taylor's apartment. No drugs were found at her home, according to police. ABC News has been covering the Breonna Taylor case in collaboration with Louisville Courier-Journal. Taylor's death became a national story shortly after the death of George Floyd sparked nationwide protests demanding justice for Black people killed at the hands of police. Jailhouse phone calls between Jamarcus Glover and Breonna Taylor. Police say they were at Taylor's apartment because they suspected Glover had been involved in drug activity. Investigators believe that Glover may have been hiding drugs or money at Taylor's apartment. In the wake of Taylor's death, police released audio from jailhouse phone calls between her and her ex-boyfriend to give more insight into the investigation that led to the shooting of Taylor's home. Friends and relatives said that they believe the release of the calls were an effort to paint Taylor negatively after her death. Glover says the last time Taylor spoke to him was February 14, 2020, Valentine's Day. Those close to her said she was trying to move on from her relationship with Glover. Still, despite her ex-boyfriend's alleged drug activity, Taylor's family says her relationship with Glover does not justify her death. Back in December of 2019, a new unit called Place-Based Investigation, PBI, was created inside the Louisville Metro Police Department. Its first task was on cleanup Elliott Avenue, a street deemed to be a high-crime, high-drug activity area. According to the Louisville Mayor Office, multiple individuals suspected of dealing drugs were identified in the investigation, including Mr. Glover. He had been arrested and convicted for drug offense in the years before Taylor was killed, but he had no violent criminal history, according to Argier. In January of 2020, the PBI began watching Glover and had surveillance on him. According to search warrant affidavit, the document also said they had seen Taylor's car outside the house in which they believed Glover was conducting drug operations. They also said they'd seen Glover leaving Taylor's apartment with a package, according to a search warrant affidavit. Detective Joshua James wrote that he believed Glover could be keeping narcotics and or proceedings from the sale of narcotics at Taylor's home. David James, a former LMPD narcotics detective, is the president of Louisville Metro Council, an elected position, the Kentucky's local government that represents Louisville district in the city. He says Taylor helped bail Glover out of jail in 2017. In my opinion, I believe that may be why LMPD believed that Breonna Taylor may have been involved with some of Mr. Glover's alleged drug activity, said James. LMPD also included this information in the report on Glover. Glover, in an August 2020 interview with journalist Philip Bailey for the Courier Journal and ABC News, denied being involved in drug activity, saying he's been free from narcotics for years. He also denied that Taylor was ever involved with his alleged drug activity. It's the only time he has spoken publicly about his relationship with Taylor. The packages at Breonna's house. Glover was admitted that Taylor was in no way connected to drug activity. Glover told Bailey that he never had anything illegal sent to Taylor's apartment, and that he used the address for online shopping. He said that when detectives saw Taylor visit him in February of 2020, the two were outside talking. Glover said that he had already been arrested and in police custody when the officers raided Taylor's apartment on March 13th. He said he heard through the police radio some of what was happening at Taylor's home. He has pleaded not guilty to multiple charges against him. Argier says that Glover's family provided him with a plea sheet document that they said would have reduced Glover's possible prison sentence if he pleaded guilty and identified Taylor as being part of a criminal syndicated enterprise with him. Glover, who is facing more than 20 years in prison for drug charges, if convicted, said he would rather tear up a plea deal than smear Taylor's name. The Jefferson County Commonwealth attorney Tom Wine said the plea sheet Argier and Glover were referring to was just a draft and not final. The official plea offer made no reference to Breonna Taylor, he claimed in the media release. Sergeant Matling, the officer who was shot in the leg by Walker, said there are multiple people to blame for Taylor's death, including Glover. Matling says that on the night of Taylor's death, police announced themselves and tried to give her plenty of time to come to the door. He says police assumed she was alone. He believes that Taylor would still be alive today if the officers had executed a no-knock warrant, which allows law enforcement to bust through the door without warning. Walker, however, claimed whoever shot her is responsible for her death. Whoever came with that person, they're responsible. Whoever allowed them to come there, they're responsible. We're gonna be right back with more details on this. Do not go anywhere. Good evening, and welcome back to the Riley King Network Investigates. Breonna Taylor, say her name. Now, we're taking a look at the timeline, the inside investigation of Breonna Taylor's killing, and its aftermath. Taylor, 26, was killed by police during the execution of a no-knock warrant. It has been more than 8 months since Breonna Taylor was gunned down in a hail of bullets by Louisville, Kentucky police officers who were executing a search warrant. At least 3 different law enforcement agencies in the state launched parallel investigations into Taylor's death. After the months have passed by, the demands for answers have joined the calls for justice of dozens of other African-American men and women killed at the hands of police. Here is what happened since Taylor's death. A look at the timeline. March 12th. Take a look. March 13th. March 20th. March 26th. April 27th. May 15th. May 22nd. June 5th. June 11th. June 23rd. September 15th. September 23rd. September 25th. September 28th. October 2nd. October 11th. October 20th. October 21st. October 22nd. October 29th. And we will be right back with more. And welcome back to the Riley King Network Investigates. Breonna Taylor, say her name. Now, we're going to take a look at new details emerged in the chaotic moments after Breonna Taylor's shooting. Body camera video shows the chaos after the shooting. Police who were executing multiple search warrants in connection to a drug investigation that involved Taylor's ex-boyfriend, Mr. Glover, in the late-night search that ensued at her home. Taylor, a 26-year-old certified emergency medical technician, was killed, and an LMPD Sergeant Jonathan McTillaning was shot and seriously injured. Glover, the main target of the investigation, was already in custody at the time of the shooting at Taylor's home. No drugs were found at Taylor's home, according to police. While there is no video of the shooting itself, body camera video from the responding officers show the chaos in moments that followed. In addition to showing dozens of officers responding to the scene, video also shows Walker being placed under arrest while he was bewildered by the shooting, still shell-shocked over his girlfriend's fatal wounds. Walker was taken into custody on charges of attempted murder of a police officer. 2 months later, the charges were dismissed. Video shows an officer telling Walker he's going to prison for the rest of his life. Dueling stories about the shooting at 303 Springfield Drive. The evening of March 12th was supposed to be a sweet one for the young couple. It was one of the first nights Taylor had off from work in some time. She and Walker decided to have a night out at the Texas Roadhouse. Taylor's youngest sister was out of town, leaving the apartment alone to the couple. They spent the evening playing cards, then watching the 2010 film Freedom Riders. Then, at 12:40 a.m., there was a loud bang at the door, he said. Walker discards with the police account of what happened in the next critical moments. Mattingly said in an exclusive interview with ABC News in their Carrier Journal that he remembers banging on the door himself. He was the one of 7 Louisville police officers executing the narcotic search warrant that night. He says he was not part of the team that had been investigating Glover and was just called to help that night. He says he verbally heard the warrant was issued as a no-knock, but claimed the police planned to knock anyway because Taylor's home was what police called a soft target. Later Glover said in an interview with ABC News and the Courier Journal that nothing had ever been illegally at Taylor's home. Mattingly said police smashed the door with an open hand the first time they knocked. Walker remembered Taylor called out, "Who is it?" Nobody said anything, Walker said. So at this time, we're getting up to put on clothes to see who it is. And then there was another loud bang at the door. Mattingly claims police did then announce themselves. I yelled, "Police search warrant, police search warrant," he said. There was a total of 6 bangs, 6 different knocks at the door while we're doing this. It's too late for anybody to be knocking on the door, Walker said. So I grabbed my gun, then we proceeded to go answer the door, Walker said. He and Taylor never heard the police announcement themselves. Mattingly remembered his lieutenant giving the order to ram the door open. When we get right in the door of the bedroom, the door flies open, Walker remembered. Mattingly says there were no lights on in the apartment. He says his line of sight was illuminated solely by a TV in the back bedroom and lights on the officers' guns. I step in the door frame to clear the hallway. I can see 2 figures, Mattingly said. I've done probably 2,000 search warrants where I've made entry, and I've never seen 2 people lined up like this down the hall. The police and the young couple were standing off on opposite sides of a narrow hallway, only about 25 feet apart when the shooting started. Protect Breonna. Protect myself, Walker said. That's what was going on through my head. Mattingly said he could see that Walker was holding a gun. My eyes went to the barrel of his gun, Mattingly said. I could see the tip of it, and my eyes just focused on it. Walker, a legal gun owner, said he let out 1 shot at the ground, which later described as a warning shot. I'm figuring it's intruders or somebody trying to break in and harm us, he said. I couldn't see anybody. It was pitch black there. Mattingly told a different story. Walker wasn't shooting at the ground, he said. He was in stretch out position with 2 hands looking straight at me. Our postures were the same, looking at each other. Moore, who lives directly across from Taylor's apartment, said she woke up in the middle of the night to gunshots. I jumped out of my sleep, she said. I just felt like you was in a movie. Because you just heard boom, 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 boom. And there was a short break, and then it just started firing off. All of these gunshots started just going, and it was just insane, another neighbor told ABC News. So I immediately called 911. There was a lot of gunshots just now. They are still shooting, Dickerson said in a 911 call. Come on, you'll need to get over here. They're shooting the hell like crazy. Madeline and 2 other officers immediately returned fire after Walker's one shot. Police fired 32 shots into the apartment. Everything happened in milliseconds. Boom, boom, boom. Returned 4 shots, Madeline said. I reached down and felt my leg. I could feel a handful of blood, and I thought, that's my femoral artery. He said he immediately knew to get a tourniquet on it, or I'm gonna die. This was just a hail of gunfire, and I grabbed Breonna, and I dropped to the ground, and I was holding her hand while we went down, Walker said. He remembers his girlfriend cried out in her final moments. She was scared to death, as I was, but she did scream at some point in time when she got hit, he said. I assumed she had to get hit, or either she got hit, or she was scared, either one. But she screamed. That's the last sound that she made. Madeline said in the moment his intent was to stop the threat, whatever that was. I wanted to get home to my family. He remembered seeing Walker dive into a room, and remember shooting at the room's opening to neutralize the threat, Madeline said. The gunfire was coming from every which direction, Walker said. It was coming from a window that was like in the room to us. They was coming down the hall. They was coming in the living room. Duncan, an LMPD officer who lived in Taylor's apartment complex, heard a huge vol of gunshots, probably about 20 to 25 shots. I immediately put my police uniform on, he said. I put my bulletproof vest on and I sprinted down to see what's going on. After the shooting stopped, Walker remembered holding his girlfriend while he called his mom. He told her someone was trying to break in. His mom told ABC News she told him to hang up and call 911. I don't even know what's happening. Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend, Walker tearfully told the 911 operator. I don't know. She's on the ground right now. Help. Oh my God, Breonna, help. The release of his heartbreaking 911 call in May set off days of mostly peaceful protest in the city. Hundreds took the streets, and some were met with pepper balls and tear gas, according to the Courier-Journal. The National Guard was sent in, and curfew was instituted in the city. After the 911 call, Walker called Taylor's mother. Her mother, he explained, someone shot her daughter, she said, and she immediately headed to Taylor's apartment complex. Walker recalling police outside while on the phone with Taylor's mother, but I was really thinking that the police came to help, he said. A group of officers were there, kind of yelling in the direction of that apartment, Duncan remembered, and it sounded like they were yelling and calling somebody out. The shooting had stopped. Breonna was dead, and officers in the parking lot were tending to the wounded Madeline. Dozens of uniformed officers, in addition to the internal 7 who were executing the warrant at Taylor's apartment, had arrived at the scene by this point. Most were armed and had their weapons trained on Taylor's apartment. Body camera video appears to show the arriving officers were all learning about the shooting in real time. The original officer had only stopped into the doorway of the apartment before the shooting started and could only guess at what was beyond. Of the little information of the arriving officers received, they heard one of their own had been shot. The new officers told the suspect is still inside, barricading with a long rifle. It looks like an AR, according to body camera video. Walker eventually walked out with his hands raised minutes after the shooting. In body camera video, he tells officers he's scared. Walker, back or I'll send this dog. Walk back to me, an officer ordered. Walker, keep on walking. Walk now, walk. Lay your hands on your head. Get down on your knees. Get down on your knees. Put your hands behind your head. As he was being handcuffed, Walker asked, "What's going on?" Former Louisville police detective Brett, one of the 7 original officers involved in this shooting, was shot 10 times into the apartment, replied, "You're going to prison. That's what's going on for the rest of your life." On the body camera video, Walker heard explaining to the police that his girlfriend was killed in the shooting that suddenly broke out in her apartment. An officer who was part of the original group executing the search warrant said they announced themselves 3 times. Police deemed Walker, who was shot at them in the tense moment. He told police it was Breonna, not he, who fired the gun. Later in police interview, Walker admitted it was actually he who fired the shot. He said he told police it had been Breonna because he was scared. After the shooting, SWAT team arrived and then went in to clear the apartment, not knowing whether they might encounter someone hiding with a gun. Body cameras showing the team getting the story from some of the first 7 officers who were executing the warrant at the apartment. Outside, Walker is seen on video crying while handcuffs being arrested. Breonna Taylor's mother left in the dark. When Taylor's mother got that phone call from Walker saying someone had shot her daughter, she said, remembers, "All I could hear is Kenny crying." When Palmer arrived at the apartment, she says an officer told her she needed to get to the hospital. Palmer went back to Taylor's apartment complex and approached Duncan. Duncan got another officer, Sergeant Chris Lane, to speak with her. In recently released audio recording, Lane tells Palmer, "I'm sorry in advance for you." She's in the apartment. "Sorry," Palmer broke down in tears. 8 months later, Breonna Taylor's story changes police and pushes reform. 3 officers in the group of 7 fired their guns that night, who was later fired from the police force, who was injured in the shooting, and were placed on administrative leave. Louisville Metro Council has since passed a new law, Breonna's Law, banning the use of no-knock warrants, which allow the police to feasibly enter people's home without giving warning. Louisville police also agreed to pay Taylor's mother $12 million to settlement a wrongful death lawsuit and to institute police reform. The city made no admission of wrongdoing, and the settlement released lawsuit against the officers and others involved in the shooting. Federal officials are investigating possible civil rights violations. One officer was the only officer involved in the shooting to be indicated by a grand jury. He currently faces 3 counts of warrant endangerment of shooting into a neighbor's apartment. He has pleaded not guilty. None of the officers were charged in connection with Taylor's death. Kentucky Attorney General said that because Walker fired the first shot, the officers were justified in their use of a deadly force to protect themselves. Matling said that if police had not given Taylor and Walker time to formulate a plan, Taylor's death would have been avoided. Walker, however, claimed whoever shot her is responsible for her death. Whoever came with that person, they're responsible. Whoever allowed them to come there, they're responsible. And we will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Riley King Network Investigates. Breonna Taylor, say her name. That is it for this Friday evening edition of the Riley King Network Investigates. Thank you for watching this Friday evening edition. Have a great rest of your evening. See you back here next Friday for another edition of the Riley King Network Investigates. And have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.